My dear students, now we have to discuss about some of the guidelines about the application forms. So, first guideline, each of the questions on the form is designed to elicit evidence on one particular competencies. So each and every applicant has number of competencies. So you have to ask question, at least one question on each of the competency. So how you can determine that that competencies is present in that particular applicant. So each competency, number two, each competency should be assessed using the following rating. How you can assess some competencies? Obviously, you need some particular kind of the rating to assess the competency. The rating can be like this. The A rating should be given if you have a strong evidence of that competency in the applicant. The B rating can be given for the acceptable evidence. Sometimes there are evidence, but that evidence is not that stronger. So you have to accept the evidence. So B rating would be given for the acceptable evidence. And number C rating would be given for the poor evidence. Sometimes people try to show different competencies, but there are no evidence, or there are evidence which are quite poor. So you have to give C rating. And based on that A, B and C rating, you would determine that someone have occupied that competency in him or her or not. So in addition to the competencies, there are behavioral indicators. Behavioral indicators are provided for each of the competencies, because without behavioral indicators, we cannot assure that someone has that competency. So these will help you avoid a rating for each competencies. So if you will give them a behavioral indicators, it would be better understandable for the selectors that someone have that competencies, or they don't have any particular competencies which they have mentioned in their application forms. So these guidelines need to be keep in mind. Every form should be given due consideration. Sometimes you are given more consideration to the some of the application forms, or ignoring others application forms. So my humble suggestion to all of you, that you have to give equal consideration to each of the application form. You have to give equal amount of time to each of the application form. So at times it can become tedious and extremely hard work, but for fairness sake. So for the fairness sake, you have to give equal time to all of the applicants, so the fairness can be maintained in the application process. It is essential that all applications are rated using a consistent approach, and the rating should be given on the following basis. A rating, strong evidence. How you can give a A rating to someone, and what would be the strong evidence? Number A, the answer is clear and directly answers the question asked. If the applicants are directly answer the question and the answer is very clear, then obviously that can determine as an A rating. Number B, the answers contain most of the indicators which can determine that someone has that competency. So if they are mentioning most of the indicator means 2/3 or more indicators are mentioned, then you can give the A rating to that person competency, and that would be a strong evidence. Then next is the B rating. B rating is for the acceptable evidence. Number A point, the answer gives indicators that evidence is present, but it is somewhat vague. If the answer is vague, if the indicators are vague, if the evidence is vague, then and needs to be explored more at the interview, then you can say that evidence is there, but that evidence is not much stronger, because that evidence needs to be explored further in the interview process. And if this is the case, then you need to give B rating, and B rating mean acceptable evidence. And then the B point, the answer contains some indicator, approximately half. If half of the indicators are mentioned in the application form, then we can go for the B rating to the applicant. And it mentioned that that is an acceptable evidence are given, and those evidence need to be explored further in the interviewing process. And the last one is a C rating, poor evidence, and sometimes we call a lack of evidence at all. So A point, the answer does not relate to the question. You are asking a question A, the answer is the question B. So the answer is not relevant to the question you are asking. It means that lack of evidence, or there is a poor evidence given. And the B point, the answer contains few indicators, means one or two indicators are given, and those indicators are not verifiable. So it means that indicators lack evidence, and they have a very poor evidence if they have mentioned it over there. C rating, and that means that the poor evidence are given, and you may reject or you may not shortlist that application form for the further selection process. So you have to keep ratings in mind. A rating, strong evidence; B rating, acceptable evidence; and C rating, poor evidence. And based on those ratings, you may shortlist application form for the next process, and the next process can be the employment test.